Hello, welcome to another edition of 1036 here on Milwaukee PBS. I'm Portia Young. In this episode,
Good morning.
We'll share a love story inside a sacred space on Milwaukee's east side and show you how that bond is helping this congregation get through a huge change. And if you thought the printing press was dead, think again after seeing what's happening inside this shop in Bayview. We begin with the story about rebuilding history. In May, a devastating fire destroyed a large portion of historic Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church on 9th and Highland. It's Milwaukee's oldest Lutheran church. The fire caused about $17 million in damages. Many of us here at Milwaukee PBS watched in horror as the flames gutted the top portion of the church. Trinity is our neighbor right across the street from our Milwaukee PBS studios here at the Milwaukee Area Technical College. Church officials now say the church walls are in satisfactory condition for reconstruction without any demolition. We invited our neighbors to talk more about the church's history and significance for our city and about their decision to rebuild. Joining me now are Pastor Edward May, vacancy or interim pastor at Trinity, and Ron Yancey, the congregation's chairman. Thank you very much for being here.
You're welcome.
We do want to start with the good news, and that is, of course, the plan to rebuild. And to not only rebuild, but rebuild at that exact location at 9th and Highland. Why is that so important to the congregation when actually the church was in a different location?
Yeah, that's true. We weren't too far away. We've always been in the city of Milwaukee, though. Mm-hmm. And so we're very community focused, and that's where our mission of getting God's word and the sacraments is all about. And so there are people that have been born and raised in this community for a long time, and so Trinity has become a bit of a staple visually and otherwise, certainly by its message. And we want to continue that because people recognize that we are part of Milwaukee, and they know that location real well. Mm-hmm. So that's important. We want to go where people have seen us, where they know they can find us.
What else is a specific plan for how to have that path forward?
Well, the heart of the people is very important, but we also believe that we've been placed here not by accident, but we believe that God has actually put the congregation here, and He has a whole lot more in store for us. So in terms of the plan then going forward, we are faith operated, and so we believe that trusting Him and His Word, that He can provide actually far beyond anything that we can imagine.
Can you tell us maybe perhaps what would be salvaged inside? What can you save?
We have not been able to get inside the building.
Oh,
okay. The city has not allowed people to get inside the building yet. I think last week the architects told us that they have some inkling of what's left in the building, but we don't know, and it's too early to talk about.
Well, let's talk about your story. I think it's fascinating. You were part of the original congregation, the first African-American congregation to be members at Trinity, Ron. You were just a toddler when your family started going there back in the 40s?
I hope I wasn't around for the original congregation.
No, not the original. But in 1949, you were the first African-American family to be welcomed into this.
My parents were the first African-American members of the congregation. In fact, my mother had gone to another church, and they had refused to have us join. And she was riding around on the streetcar, and she didn't know what to do, and she saw the spire at Trinity. So she decided to go there, and they welcomed her with open arms.
That seems very progressive at the time, and it seems like you still have those roots.
We do, and we are inclusive, again, because that's what we get from Christ. You know, it's what the scriptures tell us, that Christ so loved the world, that the Father loved the world so much that He gave us His Son. And so the world includes you and me and everyone that can walk on this earth.
Well, I do want to share some thoughts that we received from our Milwaukee PBS colleague, his renowned historian, John Gerda. We all know his name. He recently wrote about Trinity, and he says this, quote, "Whatever your faith or lack thereof, historic places of worship are among the most important fixtures of our skyline. They represent our collective memory. They connect us with our immigrant ancestors. They are irreplaceable touchstones of identity and indisputable makers of place." Well, John couldn't join us because he's out of town, but I just wanted to share those words and have you reflect on them. What do they mean to you?
And that's a very heartening message to hang on to, you know, that there really is a continuity that supersedes generation after generation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Pastor May. Thank you, Ron Yancey, for being here.
Us.
You're welcome.
Thank you. If you want to see more photos from Trinity Church, from the Milwaukee Independent, or read John Gerda's article in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, just go to MilwaukeePBS.org and click on the Around Milwaukee tab. It was June 1939 when another local church building was officially dedicated. Almost 80 years later, St. Rita of Portia Church, now part of Milwaukee's Three Holy Women Parish, is undergoing a dramatic change of its own after seeing their school close in the late 80s. It's a change that impacts a neighborhood, longtime parishioners, and the city's Italian immigrants. Who better to tell this story than the people who built this church out of faith, hope, and a whole lot of love?
Well, this place is very special.
I was born and raised actually across the street from the church.
We felt a warmth here, and so we started attending.
This is where I grew up.
And she went to grade school here, all 8 grades.
And her name is Rita.
And her name is Rita. She says they named the church after her.
This has become such a big part of our lives over the last 29 years.
If you ever want to just make a lot of noise and visit with people, this is the place to be.
Good morning.
Because I think sacred space, sanctuary in a neighborhood lifts the tide of the neighborhood.
Good morning. Thank you. How are you doing, Jim? Down there. Cookie.
Technically, I was here before the church was.
We grew up here on the east side, actually, right here on Cass Street.
Good morning, Miss Betty.
Sometimes I'll come in here late at night or after a long day, and you can just feel, you know, religion is palpable, and I just come in here and I feel holiness, and I feel peace.
Originally, most of the Italian people were Our Lady of Pompeii, but as it kept getting bigger and bigger, that's when we decided to build a church up here. And originally this was considered a mission church, which was part of Pompeii. So then us East Siders that were born in this area, we developed St. Rita's Church.
I've been a parishioner of St. Rita's Church and Parish since 1958, when I was 8 years old and we immigrated from Sicily with my family.
I think it represents the immigrant story in a very powerful way, especially the Sicilian immigrant story.
We came from a small town. Porticello was my hometown, and my mother's was Sant'Elia.
The only church I knew in the United States was St. Rita.
Everything centered around the church.
This is a celebration of St. Rita's and Pompeii, of the Sicilian American, the Italian American community, but multiplied by the Polish, St. Hedwig's, the Irish, Holy Rosary. Give me you're tired, you're hungry, your masses, and you'll find a home.
Our whole life really did center around this church because we also found many of our paisanos, if you want to say. Our family members were all here.
We're all immigrants here. I think it makes us to think seriously about some of the issues we're facing now.
Once we came to St. Rita's, there were the sisters who spoke our language, there were the priests. We had, what really was very important to us, the saints, our Lord and everything.
So we operate here out of, again, not out of fear, but out of love. And when I was here on the east side beginning 19 years ago, it was 3 separate parishes, 2 of which in the original plans were supposed to be closed. And I remember back then I thought, I don't know if that's really good for a neighborhood.
It's always been a family unit.
Well, I think we're huggers and kissers. And I think it's easy for us to greet other people.
Once you come in the doors, I feel like it's hard to leave.
When we see each other, friends and family, it isn't just shake hands or say hello. It's always grab them and hug them.
We're Irish, so I think it's fabulous, and probably also just speaks to the fact that you don't have to be, fit a certain narrow category to be welcome here.
You feel a sense of family when you come here and you come home. We've now since moved out to Union Grove, but every time we come back here, it's almost as if you're home.
I think it's the warmest community of people I've ever met. We are family.
We tried it and knew instantly that this was a place that felt like home. And actually the kids, after that first Mass, we walked out and the kids said that was some good church.
I told the folks that we'll make a decision about buildings based when we need to make the decision, not because we have to make a decision. I prayed to St. Rita because that which was supposed to be torn down is being torn down, but in its proper time. Not back then, but now. Because now we have a vision of where the next step of the road will take us. This is going to be called St. Rita Square, and it's going to be called St. Rita's Church. It's going to be a senior development. We're going to really make it a living space, but we want to make a connection. The church will be separate, so we want to honor both traditions. And you can even see in the architecture of the new church, the outside might be with a bell tower and with a little pink queue, but all of the St. Rita stuff is going to be on the inside. And because some of the St. Rita stuff is also historically Pompeii stuff. The statue that's on the altar now is a statue of St. Rita. It's our oldest and most precious statue because it's from Pompeii.
If there's something that catches me, it's the angel that sits at the top of the building. The history behind that, how that's at the perch of Our Lady of Pompeii, and then came here, and now will be taken down and then sit at the perch of the new building. That angel is sort of a trademark per se.
It's like when a family home is sold, when your parents have to sell their house or something like that and move maybe to a retirement home. There's a sadness, but it's all about the relationships and the people and the memories.
If these walls could talk, what would they say? Perhaps they would say, hey, I remember you. You sat in the third pew every single Sunday.
The right side, second pew.
I always sit in the same spot. It's about the second or third pew.
We've always sat there.
And it's my view of Margaret when she's serving.
Did you walk down this aisle on your wedding day?
Got married here.
Due to the fact that I was born across the street, I went to school here.
I was baptized here.
I was in the first communion class.
I have friends here from my kindergarten class,
the first confirmation class, and the first graduation class in 1945.
Did your children receive the sacraments here?
All my grandparents are out of town, so they became my step-in grandparents and aunts and uncles. They came to my first communions. I don't know any other place. I'm excited for the new church. I think it's great that it's bringing in a little bit of the old history with the newer generation as well, and you can establish how things were back with the Lady of Pompeii Church, but then also make it modern for people like me.
We're not Italian, but
I got drafted to work on the spaghetti dinners early on, so I've been doing that for almost the whole time.
I've been an altar server here for 4 years. Every Sunday I see everyone's faces, and it feels just like another home to me here. It's just such a special place, and I can't go without a goodbye.
I want Jesus to walk with me.
This is a bittersweet day as we move forward. This is the day God has given us. We rejoice and are glad.
There were times I was almost teary. The songs were beautiful. The message from Father Tim was beautiful.
Our ancestors, who be it in the little pink church or in the churches on the south side, the north side, Kenosha, Racine, anywhere, Jesus says, just follow me and I'll make things work. Produce abundantly.
I had mixed feelings. I was sad because of all the years that I've been here, but yet when Father Tim told us that we might be building a new church, I was happy about it. Sad and happy.
The overwhelming sense was gratitude. That was the linchpin of my existence here. I'm so grateful. We stand on the shoulders of so many people who have gone before us, and so many people even now. There have been a lot of people. And so when I was walking through, I was grateful, I was joyful, I was emotional.
I have great gratitude for the people before us and pride in all that we've done. We've survived.
God willing, I'll be here when we open up the new church.
Let us begin.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. People of God, we gather today to mark the closing of our beloved St. Rita Church. Let us lift up our voices in praise and song.
With countless gifts of love.
The wonder of Catholicism is not just a Sunday morning reality, it's a lifelong reality that we let the power of that Spirit help us through prayer.
So we come to a moment now, because of shifting demographics, kind of a sense of the church, that now St. Rita has fulfilled her responsibility at this moment. And so there's a need for transformation, a need basically for a change.
Because when this space was made, Samuel Cardinal Stritch, who was then the Archbishop of Milwaukee, Archbishop Stritch, consecrated this space. So there was a set ritual in which you went to various places in the church and put oil, holy oil on, like on the walls, consecrated the altar, consecrated the ambo.
These objects that are material, that are concrete, contain within themselves a spiritual reflection.
We believe that there's a change in the being of those things, because once you bless them, they become different in our eyes, but we also believe in reality.
Let us remember the times we have gathered for the sacred banquet.
Now that we're going to do something different here, we ask an archbishop to come and we ask him to kind of say, okay, these are no longer blessed, consecrated, deconsecrated.
So although we do a deconsecration of this moment in this building, it will once again emerge and rise anew, like we talk in terms of the resurrection, where Christ will live again here on this territory. Let us remember the baptism celebrated here, Almighty Eternal God.
We'll have deconsecrated the altar, the baptismal font, the pews, the ambo, and then we'll have benediction.
St. Rita will always be a community that tells us that you take the command that God gives you to love one another.
Infinite, thy vast domain, everlasting is thy reign.
And then the Archbishop will walk out with the Eucharist. We'll put out the tabernacle lamp, and then this is no longer a church.
But St. Rita will always remain St. Rita. She'll remain St. Rita because she was the doorway for people coming into the church.
Arrivederci, not goodbye. Until we meet again, God bless you all.
And because of St. Rita, this place, this sacred place, will never be lost.
1036 will continue to follow the story of St. Rita's demolition and rebirth. We'll bring you that segment in the coming months. We're all used to sending text messages with our smartphones these days, but there's still a bit of history hanging on in Bayview that offers a much more creative way to use letters and words to express our thoughts and feelings. The good old-fashioned printing press is behind Ashley Town's Frame of Mind.
Let's pause for a minute to think about words like we used to. To remember a time when they meant so very much. Before 140 characters dictated the volume of our thoughts. Before texting and email replaced love letters. Let's go back to a time when we took great care of our words, when language was an art form. Awesome. We're sitting in a 101-year-old letterpress print shop that has always been a print shop historically. Basically, I was teaching at MyEd full-time, but as an adjunct instructor, and going to grad school in Chicago. And in grad school, I actually focused on writing, and I ended up writing a book, and then doing a lot of the like visual stuff that went with the book at MyEd. So every time I printed out these digital prints, it was like super flat and glossy, and just wasn't like, it didn't feel, it needed to have a feel. It needed to like feel gritty. And so I was sitting at MyEd like looking at these prints, sort of dejected, and one of my colleagues was like, you know, there's this old dude that has a letterpress shop in Bayview, like you should find that guy. So I met Jim and I kind of like sort of quickly told him what I was doing. I really want to letterpress print that, or like print, it needs to like feel it, like I didn't, you know the terms. He basically kind of, in a really nice way, was like, you're crazy. Nobody does that anymore. You don't know how to do that. So he brought me down to the basement, like down those stairs, and we walked around this corner, and I just like couldn't believe what was here. Like all of the presses and all of the type and the machinery. It was like walking into a different century. I was like doing freelance design on the side, and then coming to the shop and hanging out with Jim every day. And I would say it was probably like a couple of months into that relationship where perhaps he realized like she is legitimately committed. Like she keeps showing up here every day, pregnant, all sorts of pregnant, taking naps on the floor, and then like learning how to offset print. And he sort of casually kind of one day said, gosh, I really want to retire, but nobody wants all this junk. And it just like, I very much believe in universal stars aligning, and it just really seemed like this is what is supposed to happen right now. Like this is what I'm supposed to do. So I said, husband, I think we should buy this business. When I first bought the shop, Jim was still here like every day. And I really didn't change anything. For the first like 6 months to a year, I kept operating his business basically. And then trying to introduce my little things along the way. We have 3 sort of buckets. One is classes and workshops. The second is commercial design and printing. And then the third bucket is another sort of community focus, which is the print co-op. I think when I first started the shop, I knew that I wanted to teach classes. I feel like I've always entered into so many creative spaces, like another print co-op or like any sort of artist space, and I am immediately intimidated, even like as a designer or as an artist. And I hate that feeling of like walking in somewhere and feeling like you don't belong.
Roll right on the surface of the tape.
Which way, this way?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. Here we go. Consistency. Oh, that looks good.
Gorgeous.
That looks good.
So Drinking Ink started because it was like, well, one, if we say drinking, like everyone in Milwaukee will be interested. So people come once a week, bring their own beers, and we sort of like cheers and then go over talk about wood type and like, this is our collection and this is, you know, what you can do. And then everyone designs their own poster.
So I usually don't recommend that.
The first few classes or so where you get like a room full of strangers and you give them a specific like design problem, and then you see these folks that maybe didn't know each other before, like kind of problem solve together and like make artwork together, and it's sort of magical. I got to see like tiny communities coming together all the time, like in our space.
You're gonna go all the way to the end. Oh, that looks dope. Yeah. Oh, I like it.
Oh, yeah,
Cool.
This looks awesome. I think typography is like visible language, and that's probably why I love it so much. So to be able to see that form as an actual 3-dimensional form is totally different than seeing language on a screen. I think for me, the love of typography is about like the beauty of letter forms, but the love of printing is kind of about the production, like the work, the process. The magic of the press is it's definitely the sound while it's running. There's a rhythm to your body, the way that you're moving when you're printing. There's the physicality that's like involved in printing. Awesome. I do kind of wonder a lot, actually, if I'll be the last person to own Bayview Printing. And no one ever talks about that, because it's sort of sad, maybe. I wonder a lot, like, is there really like enough interest in something like this to keep a business going for long enough that in 30 years I can sell it to someone? Or I kind of feel like probably not.
The previous owner of Bayview Printing Company, Jim Baker, who Ashley referred to, didn't want to speak with us on camera, saying this is Ashley's time to shine. Tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here on 1036. We want to also hear your story ideas. Call us at 414-797-3760. Give us your feedback and your ideas. And remember, you can always check us out on Facebook and at MilwaukeePBS.org. That'll do it for this edition of 1036. We leave you with some beautiful images of the Water Lantern Festival in Milwaukee, courtesy of Lee Matz and our partners at Milwaukee Independent.